I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us, a reoccurring guest. I want to just start with this. He wrote this book years ago, The Awakening of a Surgeon. And this is an orthopedic surgeon. I'm kind of giving it away. This says it's 6 printings. It probably could have been a bestseller over and over again. Thousands and thousands of these books have been sold. It's on his website. I kind of given it away. Now he owns the website and the radio show Operation Freedom and DaveJanda.com all together. You can Google Dave Janda Operation Freedom, get him there. Dave Janda, thanks for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Thanks for having me back, Greg. It's always an honor. And that book actually makes great kindling. If you don't
that's in the 6th reprinting. You just reprinted it for the 6th time. And I know, and you have a story to tell about Oprah, about being on the Oprah Winfrey Show. Will you tell me about it at the end? So we're going to save this for the end, but this is on your website. It's still a viable book that we'll get to at the end of this interview. But let's start with, you have a lot of sources. You spent 30, people don't, why do you talk to Dr. Dave Janda, a former orthopedic surgeon? Well, because he developed a lot of sources in and out of Washington, working on different things for like the Reagan administration for healthcare, and has a deep pool of sources. Now those turned into sources that were, for years and years, decades of sources, and all kinds of political and law enforcement and also intelligence sources. And so, Dave, now you're running your own radio show. You're retired from being an orthopedic surgeon, although you're probably once a doctor, always a doctor. But you are doing Operation Freedom, and you are wanting to help America. And I got to start with this G7. I know Donald Trump. We'll get to that in a minute. Donald Trump was, had this historic signing, which I don't want to underplay that at all. That is a big news story. But I want to start just before he goes to the G7, which they wanted to make it G6 plus 1. The United States, they odd man out. But everybody, not everybody, but at the very least, everybody was pissed except really basically China and Russia. I mean, the UK, they were acting snobbish. Macron was saying nasty things. Merkel was leaning over the table at him. Her body language wasn't good. Nothing. And they were all worried and saying nasty things about Donald Trump and dangerous things about Donald Trump. And I think it goes back to the Iran deal that he broke up. The Iran deal. It's the high person in the Iranian administration. A high, what do you call him? A consultant or a high advisor to one of the top people blurted out, we're going to disclose the people that got bribed. This is on the Twitter record. What do you suppose is going on with the G7? Why was everybody so pissed at the G7?
Well, I think you've outlined it very, very well already, Greg. The globalists have had a very bad week, a very bad month, a very bad year. And it really is coming to a head. I just actually put out a YouTube brief presentation saying that this is one of the most important, if not the most important week of my life when it comes to the issue, the concept of freedom. Donald Trump blew up the G7 meeting, and he blew it up on many different fronts. And he was successful because the bought-off lamestream fake media that's owned and operated by the globalist syndicate is absolutely petrified, panicked, distraught, and hysterical in their analysis of what happened at that meeting. I mean, let's look at it from a non-globalist perspective, a freedom fighter's perspective. Donald Trump went in there, and what was the first thing he did, Greg? He said, this is the G7. It really should be, we should make this back to the G8. Remember, Russia was expelled from the G8 back in 2014.
Yep.
And what the globalists thrive on, the Rothschild-Rockefeller axis of globalists that have been running the show for decades, thrive on fear, force, and impending war. And in their minds, nuclear war, what could be better? Because millions of useless eaters can become victims of a nuclear war, and we can petrify them quicker and more effectively by throwing out this narrative of imminent nuclear war. Well, the globalists want Russia and the United States head-to-head, banging heads. They don't want them to get along because the business model of the Rothschilds and Rockefeller globalist axis is that conflicts. They pay both sides of the conflict, both entities involved in the conflict. And out of that conflict, they get more money, more power, more control. So what does Trump go in there? The first thing he does when he gets a candidate, he goes, hey, I think we should expand this back to the G8. That sends a message, hey, we want Russia back in the fold so we can negotiate and have them part of the process as opposed to being enemies. Okay, that's the first thing. Then you see all these pictures with, as you mentioned, Merkel lording over him and the other guy with their arms crossed looking at Trump like, hey, come on, buddy, get off a dead center. Well, what was happening there? Trump was not going along with backing down on NAFTA. He was not going along with backing down on potential tariffs across the world, not just to Canada and to Mexico, but to China, to Europe, to Japan, across the board. He wasn't backing down. And they were having a very difficult time with that because all of these trade agreements that are created, whether it's NAFTA or whether it's the TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership, that Obama was behind and Hillary Clinton was behind and the Bushes were behind. These are all globalist policies that, what do? They destroy the United States. They destroy the manufacturing base of the United States. They build up these third world entities. And what they do is they enrich the globalists. So Trump was not backing down on his position on getting rid of NAFTA or modifying NAFTA. He was not backing down on his trade potential war with China, with the EU. They were distraught. So they tried to influence him at this G7 meeting, and they failed. So what did they do? After Trump gets on the plane to go to Singapore to work on the North Korean peace initiative, which, by the way, the globalists despise as well, because, hey, wait a minute, we can't take that nuclear threat off the table, according to the globalists, because they've been using that dude and his father and his grandfather for decades to create chaos, to create this imminent nuclear war. Fear, right? So Trump gets on the plane, and what do? They change the communique. They send Trudeau out, who has half an eyebrow falling down off his head, and they put him out there to create a false narrative of what was going on at this G7 meeting. Well, what's interesting is how these people keep underestimating Trump.
Well, you were in
the plane. He's on the plane, and here's what he tweets: that Trudeau lied, refuses to endorse, and Trump refuses to endorse the final G7 communique. Here's what he said, quote, Prime Minister Trudeau of Canada was very dishonest and weak. I have instructed our U.S. representatives not to endorse the communique. Based on Justin's false statements at his news conference and the fact that Canada is charging massive tariffs to our U.S. farmers, workers, and companies, I have instructed our U.S. reps not to endorse the communique as we look at tariffs on automobiles flooding the U.S. market, end quote. Well, so Greg, all this stuff is tied. And what people need to realize is, love Trump, hate Trump, but you have to understand Trump. Trump is a businessman. He is a deal maker and he's a deal breaker. And he utilizes leverage to the max to get the deals that he wants to work. Okay? Trump has tied this entire trade agreement, NAFTA, to a peace initiative that the globalists are against, and that's peace with North Korea. Now, to all these people, all these demagogues out there that are saying, well, they met for a while and not much came of that meeting. Oh, come on, stop it. Stop it. This is the first time a sitting U.S. president met with the leader of North Korea that has been a rogue regime for decades.
But since the 50s. Their war never ended.
And at the end of that meeting, they both sat at a table, Greg, and they signed a document. And a part of that document said that the Korean Peninsula would be denuclearized. That's a huge deal. And it's a huge, if you will, stab in the chest to the globalists, because we now have video proof of a signed document. That's much more proof than we have of an Iran document that you have outlined was never signed. Never signed.
By anybody.
So, by anybody.
I want to get in there.
We have a signed agreement by the leader of North Korea, the President of the United States, that says that the Korean Peninsula will be denuclearized. That is Nobel Prize material. That focuses on world peace. Now, what brought Kim to that table? It goes back to what we just discussed. Trump leveraged the peace process with the trade process. He made it inherently and abundantly clear to China. And let's face it, Kim has been a puppet. His father and his grandfather have all been puppets of the Chinese government. And every time the Chinese government wanted something out of the West, which has been run by the globalists, they have their crazy uncle come out of the closet from North Korea, shake him around, boogeyman, and China gets their way and the globalists get their way. What Trump did is he said, look, China, we're talking about a trade war here. We're not putting up with your grief anymore, okay? You guys sell us a huge amount of stuff every year, and guess what? We're going to close our markets to you. But we can talk if you bring that dude to the table and that dude signs an agreement with us. In addition, Trump said, you know what, by the way, China, you have a huge backdoor in the NAFTA agreement through Canada and through Mexico, where you're bringing your products in, your supplies, if you will, into these shell companies that have been created in Canada and Mexico. You're not paying the tariffs that if you would have brought them in directly in the United States. I'm going to close that door. Now, the way we can maybe keep that door open a little bit, but not to the level it has been, and the way we can prevent a trade war so our markets are open to your products, is you're going to bring that guy to this table and we are going to create peace.
Boom.
No other president has done that. Obama?
Yeah, no.
Bushes? Both Bushes?
Obama, who won a Nobel Prize for what he might do in the future. Then he came up with the drone murder program.
And then he became the droner-in-chief and killed tens of thousands of people with his drones. Yeah, right. So only Alfred Nobel would be proud of him, the guy who developed dynamite, who was the guy behind the the Nobel Prize, right? Okay. So the bottom line here, Greg, is that Trump utilized the trade agreements with NAFTA, with China, as leverage for peace.
And that's why he wants to go after China and Mexico individually. So you don't get a blanket deal. We're going to run a deal on you, Mexico, and it's totally different than the deal on Canada. Totally different. That's why it's all intertwined.
And it wasn't just China.
And that's why Vicente Fox is pissed. Is that right? Why he's so pissed?
That's exactly.
And is that why Justin Trudeau is also pissed? They're going to cut off their money?
Yes, because this NAFTA agreement not only enriched China by keeping opening a barn door wide open to bring their products in with very minimal tariffs, but Greg, it also benefited the Vicente Fox of the world and the Trudeau family of the world, and God knows how many other Canadian politicians and how many Mexican politicians. This is why Vicente Fox has been so crazy anti-Trump, where he's dropping the F-bomb about Trump. Because he saw his gravy train ending and the fact that he would be exposed.
This is a huge cheat that you're revealing right here on USA Watchdog. They were using NAFTA, China, and I'm sure other people, were using NAFTA to cheat our workers, our factories, our industries by flooding them into shell companies, a fraud, and then it was just fraud. And then bringing the stuff in for little or no tariff because of NAFTA to rip us off. That's what you're telling us.
Yes, and Greg, go back to 1992. Ross Perot.
Yeah.
He was demagogued by the media.
Giant sucking sound.
Crazy man. As he was marginalized. He was ridiculed. But what did he say? 110% of what Ross Perot said about NAFTA has been proven to be correct. There was a great whooshing sound of jobs leaving. manufacturing leaving, production facilities leaving the United States. And who benefited from that? Multinational corporations that are run by the globalists, political leaders.
And now you know why when Trump said at the end of, and this was blunt, and
Yeah.
but it was true, and that was America is the piggy bank the world loves to rob.
Right.
Well, there you
and
go.
Who's the first people at that piggy bank are these politicians, whether they're from Mexico or Canada or Greg, go back, or the United States for that matter. Greg, go back to that conversation, the last interview we did about the Iranian nuclear deal. That, Greg, you have exposed this. It was a deal that wasn't signed. It was a money laundering operation, okay?
It was,
all these agreements, Greg, that are created by the globalists are money laundering fronts, whether it's NAFTA or whether it's the Iran deal. They're all money laundering fronts, period. And Trump he's trying to put an end to that, and that's why all these globalists, whether they're Merkel or Macron or Vincenzo Fox or whoever it is, they're so crazed, they're so hysterical because their money laundering operation is ending. And not only that, they're going to be exposed for the criminals they are.
You brought something up in the pre-interview. So here we have the G7. You have all the signatories at the G7, except for Russia. There, the main ones are allies: UK, France, and Germany. Why didn't they bring up the Iran no signature deal that nobody signed? Not Iran, not a US, not anybody. Why did they bring that up at the G7?
Well, first of all, Russia and China, who are allies of Iran, you would think with this Iran deal going down, you'd think they would have been really voicing concern about this deal going down, right?
Not a word.
Not a word. And the reason is...
wait. I mean, hold on. Let me so people understand this. I don't want you thinking this was the deal that was going to stop nuclear war.
Right.
If we didn't have this deal, the world would be a glowing red cinder ash. If we didn't have this deal. Mm-hmm. So continue, please.
Well, and as we pointed out in our last interview, Greg, that the Iran deal really had nothing to do about nukes. It was all about money laundering, and it was really a drug deal.
Yeah. You talked about that. That's why Kerry was there.
It was a drug deal, and it was a money laundering operation. You know, Greg, when we did that interview, you got grief, and I got grief.
Oh, yes, I did.
When we were talking about the fact that this was a money laundering operation, and that people in the West were paid off to go along with this operation. And Greg, about 24 hours after you released the interview we did, we taped it on a Friday, you released it Sunday night, and Greg, what happened Monday morning?
The high-ranking Iranian official tweeted in the record that they were going to expose the people they bribed in the West, France, Germany, US, UK. They were going to expose those people that they bribed because they were pissed because, you know what? They didn't get their money's worth. They got screwed.
So your viewers, your loyal viewers to USA Watchdog need to realize that there are a lot of big-time players that listen to everything you do. They watch everything you do. And in fact...
Well, you too, Dave.
And more you than me. But what happened with that interview, and the fact that we brought that up, that it was a money laundering operation, we talked about the tens of billions of dollars in cash.
That was a piece of news because they finally went from 400 million to a billion to a billion 2 or 3 and then a billion 7 and nobody. And you're saying tens of billions. We're talking about a parade of C-130s with euros and $100 bills on pallets flying into Iran.
The word I heard was 5 C-130s. But Greg, listen.
A C-130 can carry 2 tanks or a tank.
In the interview and subsequently, I said, okay, I'll tell you what. If what I've been told is wrong, and that it was now 1.8 billion as opposed to tens of billions. Please forward me the documentation of the wire transfer from the United States government to the Iranian government of the billions of dollars that occurred wire transfer rather than cash.
You can't do that, buddy.
Nobody has presented that to me or anyone.
I've never even seen a single document with, well, there's no signatures, but I haven't ever seen the deal. John Kerry didn't know what was in it. He sat in front of Congress and said, I don't know.
Because, Greg, the deal was a money laundering deal that was based on drugs.
Oh, boy. Well, you had released the fact that now everybody knew Kerry was over in Iran. Look over here, look over here, look over here. But you revealed that Obama took a little trip to Colombia. Oops.
Yeah, to shore up the other end of the line, right? So the reason why this drug deal was created is because the Trump administration early on got the DEA involved and took out production facilities in Central America and South America. Their production facilities essentially became null and void. So what ended up happening is that they had to create a different supply line. Now many people say, well, the Iranian officials have been against the drug trade for years. Okay, look, here's what's happening. The stuff is being produced in Turkey and Afghanistan, and it's being funneled. Okay, and what's happening is they needed a supply route, and they paid these guys off to be involved in this, to look the other way as the drugs came through. And as far as Iran is concerned, they're saying, hey, who are these drugs going to be affecting? Are they affecting our population? Heck no. They're going to be affecting people in the West. Even better, right, for them. So the bottom line is that this was a money laundering, drug-related operation when all this started to blow up because Trump said the Iranian deal is off. Kerry flew, met with Iranian officials to try to say, hey, wait, we still got the pipeline coming, right? We still got the pipeline coming. And in the meantime, what I was told was that Obama went to Colombia to shore up that end of the pipeline to assure them that the pipeline wasn't going away. Now, I heard from very reliable people that Obama and the people around him were absolutely pissed that information got out.
Well, it could only get out here because Fox didn't cover it. Nobody else covered it.
Oh, they're not going to touch it. I mean, Craig.
You know what? Nobody else has called and told me that I should retract that no State Department official, no fake news people, no, Washington Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal. They haven't, featured me in a story that I'm cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs or anything like that. They haven't touched this. They haven't touched the Iran no signature deal, which is provable with a document from the Kerry State Department. That's also provable. That's provable. They say it was not signed. This is not a signed deal.
So we have the Iran deal blowing up. We have their money laundering operation through Iran blowing up. We have NAFTA money laundering operation now blowing up. They thought they could pull a fast one on Trump, getting him there and then changing things after he left. That hasn't worked. They have Trump now signing a denuclearization agreement with Kim, right? And what I believe what you're going to see happen here is that you're going to see all of a sudden pieces of the puzzle that have been worked on for months start to fall into place on this North Korean peace initiative. Look, this was not a one-off event, okay? What I have been told is that the Trump administration, as early as March of 2017, about a month after he was inaugurated, they initiated a dialogue and had representatives meeting with Kim and his representatives about this peace process.
Utterly brilliant.
As I understand it, Rudy Giuliani was part of this team, and he had been meeting with Kim's representatives, along with a team that Trump had assembled. And many of these issues have already been worked out, have already been in place. And in fact, if you go back to November of 2017, Trump went on this 12-day mission to Southeast Asia. It's my understanding that in that event, he had a secret meeting with Kim's representative, who is one of his most trusted advisors, who I believe also is his cousin. Trump met with that individual face to face. After that meeting, after the conclusion of that meeting, and after that individual went back to North Korea and discussed the meeting with Kim that he had, that the cousin had with Trump, not another missile was tested or fired from North Korea. Go Google it, DuckDuckGo it, whatever you want. The last missile that was fired was the end of November 2017 from North Korea. Since then, nothing. That's just not circumstance. That's not just because Kim hasn't gotten wound up lately. It's because of the pieces of the puzzle that were falling together, and that part of the puzzle ended November 2017.
And that was critical for China because China was also working the NAFTA agreement with the no tariff imports going into Canada and Mexico, more fraud, and they want to keep at least some of that. And because their whole population, their 3 billion people may have an uprising and kick all those guys out of power, and there's not enough machine guns to kill them all. But so, right, I mean, that's what they wanted. They wanted to keep the gravy chain, at least some of it, going.
So you're going to see a development positive on the peace front. Then you're going to see some backing down of the trade war talk with China. Okay. Then you're going to see another development with the peace process with North Korea. You're going to see more backing down. You're going to see more negotiation, more open. I mean, these two people need to realize that the peace initiative and the trade agreements are going hand in hand.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Trump, I believe, is going to use that same model of negotiation and that same linkage, and he's now going to take that model that he has developed in North Korea and with China, and now where is he going to take it? He's going to take it to Iran. He's going to take it to Iran, and he's going to create a real, not money laundering deal, not drug deal. He's going to create a deal with Iran, with China, with Russia. And he's going to use trade as a means of negotiating an agreement with Iran and their, if you will, their allies, that being Russia and China.
Well, Iran's gotten screwed. They have woken up screwed. They're like, oh my gosh, our 150 billion is all divvied up and gone. We got some pallets of money, but we got, just a portion of it. It all went to the U.S. It all went to the UK, France, Germany. Everybody, all these cronies got paid off, and now we got a new president, and we got nothing. We got screwed. Iran got screwed. People keep telling me that you're against Iran. No, I wanted a real deal, not a fraud fest. And we got a fraud fest, which makes us more probable to go to war than less probable.
Greg, I think your position is very sensible. You do not want war with Iran.
No, I do not.
On the other hand, you don't want to placate terrorists. It goes back to Ronald Reagan's trust but verify. You want an agreement that you can trust, they can trust, everybody around the world can trust. You want an agreement that denuclearizes many of these rogue regimes, and you want an agreement that's based on peace. Now, who doesn't want that? I can tell you who doesn't want that.
The globalists.
The globalists, led by the Rothschild Rockefeller axis of puppet masters. They don't want that. Because that affects their bottom line.
And the mainstream media are all bought off by them because if you watch the coverage of MSNBC and CNN and CBS, and we're not that great. Yeah, I know. Well, I know there's Kim Jong-un sitting at a table next to Trump, but that's not a big deal. You got to be kidding me. That picture is mind-blowing.
It is a huge deal.
We're still at war with North Korea. People don't realize that.
Correct. So there, I think, are other shoes that are going to drop in a positive manner on that. I think you're probably going to see in the future here, and hopefully the near future, a armistice called on that 70-year war or whatever it is now.
Yep.
I think you're also going to see many, if not all, of our troops leaving the South Korean.
That's expensive.
And coming back to the United States, and many people say, well, where would they go? How about our southern border? I mean, there's a huge wall to build.
Yeah.
There's a huge border to protect, not just the southern border, but the northern border. What people don't talk about, and I'm up in Michigan, is that, everybody talks about the civ of the southern border. Greg, there's a huge civ on the northern border too.
Yeah.
And so the bottom line is there's plenty of places for our military forces to go to enhance the safety and security of our country and every American.
Yeah. I want to. It's we're long in this interview, but I want to go long. Usually try to top them up at 30 minutes, but people are going to go to jail over this Iran deal. I mean, I know people are like, oh, what do you keep eating a dead horse? It's not a dead horse. This thing's still breathing. This is a huge fraud that involved not only just the Obama administration, but our allies. Everybody got paid off. Everybody got bribed. Everybody committed fraud. And I think everybody committed treason in all their individual countries. And not a peep from the G7. Not a peep, not a word.
Because they were integrally involved in it. And understand something. As we mentioned, this is a bad week, bad month, bad year for the globalists. Well, there's another shoe going to drop. And on June 14th, a part of the Inspector General's report of the Department of Justice, Michael Horowitz, that you and I have spoken about before, is going to be made public. Now, I have a couple predictions on that. One is when it becomes public, I believe the globalists are in the crosshairs on this. I believe it's going to be heavily redacted. Okay? But understand something. That's not where this is going to end. Just as the House Intelligence Committee memo was heavily redacted, all of a sudden there was this outrage by the public. Wait a minute. We're big boys. We're big girls. Yeah, no. We're paying for this info. Give it to us. Well, okay, right?
Yeah.
And it was unredacted, and everybody's like, oh my goodness, this is eye-opening. Same thing's going to happen here.
But this is worse.
I believe on the 14th, but which, by the way, it's not just a coincidence that June 14th, when the Inspector General's report is released, it's not just coincidence that it happens to be whose birthday, Greg?
Donald J. Trump.
Donald J. Trump's birthday. Happy birthday, President Trump. Okay? I mean, believe me, it's not coincidence. That Inspector General's report is going to open the door, and it's going to open people's eyes.
Hillary's going to go down for, I've heard that, we all know she had an unprotected server. Some people have been saying, and I cannot substantiate this, but this is something I read online, and I'm thinking, wow, nothing would surprise me. But that she had that thing unprotected as part of the bribery. That here, you can get all the top secret SOP information, standard operating, whatever, the special operations, all the classified information you want. I'll just leave it unprotected. That was part of the bribe. That was part of the deal to get all this information out to our enemies with their unprotected servers.
Very high-ranking people who have had the highest security levels possible have told me for months that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, because he utilized Hillary's server under a pseudonym.
That's right, he had his own email.
That both Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama have violated the Espionage Act on repeated occasions. If you look at what has already transpired, remember, the Inspector General's report was handed to the House Intelligence Committee, the House Judiciary Committee, and the Senate Judiciary Committee on January 12th, 2018. This was reported by award-winning journalist Ed Berger. It's been documented.
And it was unredacted.
It was unredacted. Now, since that happened, I just want to go through a quick list of the results of that report being delivered to Congress. And this actually was from the Conservative Treehouse, great website. As a result of the known Office Inspector General investigative findings already, the top FBI and Department of Justice officials in charge of the Clinton investigation have been fired, demoted, or removed from responsibility, including James Comey, fired. Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, fired. Not only that, but the Inspector General recently put out a position that he should be prosecuted, correct? FBI legal counsel James Baker, removed. He then quit, but in fact, my sources say that he was fired. Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, fired. Actually, he quit and then he was fired.
Yeah.
FBI legal counsel James Baker was removed and fired. FBI investigative agent Peter Strazik, demoted, reassigned. Department of Justice special counsel to McCabe, Lisa Page, removed, reassigned. She quit. In fact, I've been told she was fired. Department of Justice Deputy Assistant Attorney General Bruce Orr, demoted twice. In addition, FBI Communications Director Mike Cortan, quit. Director Comey Chief of Staff Jim Rubicki, quit. Department of Justice Department of Assistant Attorney General Mary McCord, quit. Department of Justice Deputy Attorney General David Loffman, quit. Look. The Inspector General's report has already taken out many of these globalist puppets that were there to protect Hillary, Obama, Brennan, former director of the CIA, Clapper, for their criminal violation of many statutes, including violation of the Espionage Act. It's huge. It's huge, Greg. It's absolutely enormous. And to those people that say, and many people disagree with me on this, I get it, that Sessions is a problem and not part of the solution. June 4th, Jeff Sessions, he hired 300 federal prosecutors.
Yep.
He is the one who, if you will, allowed Horowitz to continue his investigation for months that are leading to what's going to happen in the next week. Horowitz presents his information on the 14th. My guess, from what I've told, it's going to be heavily redacted. It's going to cause public outrage to the point where Trump is probably going to have to come in with some type of order or executive order and say, unredacted. It's also my understanding that Horowitz is going to testify in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee on Monday, June 18th. Many people say Horowitz was appointed by Obama. He's a globalist. You know what? As far as what I have been told is Horowitz is a freedom fighter. He's not playing for the globalists. He's playing for the, quote, good guys. And that Horowitz, along with, and keep these names in mind, Horowitz, former director of the National Security Agency, Admiral Mike Rogers, who was the one who went to Trump Tower to tell Trump that he was illegally being surveilled. He's going to come forward, as is the federal prosecutor, Huber, from Utah.
I wanted to bring that up. They've already got a special prosecutor in effect. They've already got a prosecutor. He's not called special. He doesn't get a redacted version of that report.
No.
And he's got hundreds of people working on this already. Sessions has this Huber, who was also an Obama appointee. So
and Horowitz had a crew of 450 investigators working with him that Sessions approved. And now Sessions has approved another 300 federal prosecutors. Why on June 4th did he appoint 300 more prosecutors? It's not to sit around and clip their nails at a desk.
Are we going to get a cascade of indictments soon?
I believe we are. I believe this is one of the reasons why Trump went to Singapore. He signed an agreement. I believe there are steps in place for other processes to take place, other steps to take place in the peace process that are directly linked to the trade issue. But I believe he also had to get back, not just for his birthday party. I believe he wanted to get back, so he was in town when this Inspector General's report started to hit.
And he can also come in and say, oh, wow, I didn't know the backlash was going to be so great. This is a national security issue. I've seen the report. My people have seen the report. I'm going to unredact it. Oh, my gosh, people are going to be ruined. Hillary Clinton is going to be ruined. So is Bill Clinton. And I want to just talk about Bill and Hillary Clinton. To me, and I'm just a dumb guy here and having my own little USA watchdog thing, but to me, Hillary and Bill are dead meat. They're trying to revive the Clinton Foundation. I think they need money for legal fees. But to me, the only use that the globalists have to them is to throw him in front of a bus and put him into a wood chipper. Here you go. Hey, we're cleaning this up. Hey, here are the Clintons. I mean, you had Bill Clinton saying that you can't get away with doing things against people's will anymore like you could in the old days. You mean like rape? I mean, I think the Clintons, if they should be running to the FBI and say, please arrest us.
They've had a really bad week, Greg. I mean, their foundation is in shambles. I think one of the ramifications of this Inspector General's report, it's going to open up the foundation to further scrutiny. One of your great guests, Charles Ortel, who has outlined for months, if not for the past several years, about the criminality of the Clinton Foundation. I believe much of the information Charles Ortel has presented to your audience, far ahead of what the vast majority of the American public has heard, I think is going to come to fruition. I think that's going to come through the Inspector General. The Clintons have been taken on water for a long period of time, and yes, I agree with you, Greg. I believe the globalists have offered up Bill and Hillary Clinton as their, quote, humans, kind of interesting, human sacrifices, and they're hoping that if they allow them to be prosecuted, if they allow them to be punished, if they allow them to be their past actions exposed to the public, the globalist hope is that people will say, okay, so you got your pound of flesh or your 2 pounds of flesh here, Bill and Hillary. Okay, well, let's just back off of everybody else. And frankly, Greg, I don't think that's going to happen. I think they are going to be exposed. I do believe that their day of reckoning is soon at hand. And Greg, I do believe it's not going to be enough for people. Because when people realize the criminality of what they did over the years and how it affected every American and every American family, that they are going to call for more pounds of flesh from the globalist community.
I think Hillary and Bill are going to roll. I think they're going to roll and give up whoever they can. Hillary don't want to spend the rest of her life falling down the stairs in the jailhouse. Bill doesn't want. I mean, hey, he's still out being Mr. Hey, I'm still chasing down my main squeezes for him. He's still out there, in the party life and the sex life, on Pedophile Island and all that. He's reportedly been over there, I don't know, dozens of times.
Well, see, I believe, the Clintons are not stupid. I believe Bill is trying to create a scenario for himself, because I think it's every person for themselves. I mean, they don't get along amongst themselves, the two of them. It's common knowledge. But I believe Bill is trying to create for himself almost a psychological profile out of being persecuted, if you will. I mean, you mentioned what he said, right? Bill, from Zero Hedge, Bill Clinton notes cultural shift in, quote, what you can do to somebody against their will, end quote.
That's crazy time.
My wife heard that, and she said, well, he's always been a criminal, but my God, I mean, he's senile. This is dementia. Well, that's exactly. And I said, hey, do you think maybe that's what he's trying to let people think? That this is his defense? That you can't prosecute.
That's all he's got.
Mentally, who's gone, who's demented.
Dave, that's all he's got. Then if he were there, I mean, that's throwing something on the wall and hoping it'll stick.
Right, but I believe he's that desperate. I mean, look at the interview we did with that NBC dude, where the NBC dude starts talking about the Me Too movement and goes, "Hey, how does you think that pertains to you and Monica Lewinsky?" And Bill went like off the rails, right?
She was 21. Monica Lewinsky. That was the president of the United States of America.
I mean, he went off the rails. But I also, Greg, you look who I'm talking to. You know the network, right? You know networks. You worked at CNN and ABC. Greg, if you were doing an interview with Bill Clinton and you were part of the syndicate, which you never were, all those interviews are scripted.
Oh, they would have never seen. They wanted that to be seen. They would have edited that out.
That guy just whipped the Monica Lewinsky line on him, and it wasn't planned.
That's right. They would have edited that out.
It wasn't edited.
The bosses would have come in and said, "No. You can't."
They are trying to present a defense for this guy as this stuff starts to seep out.
Well, defense for themselves.
Yeah.
They if you go back to NBC years of the Clinton years in NBC, ABC, CBS, they all covered the Clintons. They covered them. I
Right.
mean, this. I mean, Dave. The Clinton Foundation is a, and Ortel has. He's one of the best guys to lay this out. Charles
he's
Ortel is a
phenomenal. He's
complete and
phenomenal.
total fraud.
Yes. A
It's
criminal fraud.
you can't get past. It was only supposed to be a library, an archival library, according to Ortel. And that the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton Global Initiative, what? No, they don't have any paperwork for that.
And it's a side angle of money being brought in. $145 million got brought into the foundation on the Uranium One deal for 20% of the uranium supply of the United States. I mean, come on.
They
Just
robbed.
That one deal alone. That one deal alone is treason. One deal.
They robbed Haiti from between $1 billion and $4 billion.
Yeah.
I mean, $1 billion. As if $1 billion isn't a lot. 1,000 million.
We talk about the bad week they've had. Look at the bad week the people associated with the Clintons have had, right? Or have referenced the Clintons. Kate Spade, the designer, right?
Yeah.
She was part of the Clinton Foundation.
Yeah.
Well, what did Kate Spade recently do? The word I heard was she confronted Hillary Clinton at a public event about the Clinton Foundation's involvement in Haiti and the human trafficking link with Laura Silsby and the Clinton Foundation. And what happened to Kate Spade? Wait, Greg, tell me. What I heard was she hung herself with one of her own scarves off of a what, Greg?
A doorknob.
Okay. Wait now. Greg.
How did that happen?
Hung herself with a scarf from a doorknob?
Yeah.
Right?
That's the official reporting.
Okay. I know. And they expect you to believe that.
Yeah.
Right? And then look at Anthony Bourdain, who has come out, who for months came out against Harvey Weinstein and the Clintons and saying that his girlfriend, Asia, whatever her last name is, was raped by Weinstein, and that Hillary Clinton was knowledgeable about this stuff and all the other abuse toward women, and Hillary Clinton kept silent. And a month ago, Bourdain tweeted, "I'm getting a lot of heat from the Clinton." I think he called them the Clinton goons. And what happened to Bourdain? Oh yeah, he was found hung as well.
Yeah,
I mean, they're having the Clintons are having a really bad week, and the people around the Clintons are even having worse weeks.
And I've heard Bourdain has a TV show that he did, not at CNN. CNN they're just I don't know what they are. They're not a news organization anymore. But I heard he's got a TV show that could roll out.
Yeah, I had heard a similar thing. I had heard that he, behind the scenes, not working with CNN, but I guess he was buddies with Elon Musk and Anthony Bourdain. There was recently this human trafficking network takedown in Atlanta, and it was my understanding that Bourdain, with the help of Musk, had worked on and developed some TV show special on human trafficking and its ties to the globalists.
Why wasn't that a huge news story down there in CNN? That's where their headquarters are. I've been there. Why wasn't that a huge news story that involved children human trafficking down there in Atlanta?
Because the people running the human trafficking network, Greg, are the same people that owned and operate the bought off lamestream fake media.
Also, the human trafficking in Arizona. Another huge story. Why aren't they covering that?
And all the media does is try to cover up. Whether they try to cover up, they label everything Pizzagate, and it's all conspiracy theory. And these are all crazy people talking about. Under Trump, there have been thousands of people arrested and prosecuted as it relates to human trafficking. Donald Trump, in December of 2017, put out an executive order focusing on human trafficking in the pedophile networks. It is front and center. Trump, one of the other agendas he is working on is that he's working on destruction of the human trafficking pedophile networks, because that is the means that the globalists use, those networks, for bribery, for money laundering, for enriching themselves,
extortion,
and for blackmail.
Yeah. I want to end this. You think, and I want to make sure I get this. Two things. Mark Taylor has said that that Obama's going to go down. He's going to be, well, his quote, ripped and stripped of his presidency. You can impeach a president after he's left office. Is this going to go all the way up to President Barack Obama?
Yeah, I believe it is. I believe the people that the crosshairs are on right now are Obama, the Clintons, Brennan, the former director of the CIA, Clapper, the former director of National Intelligence, Loretta Lynch, former Attorney General, Eric Holder, former Attorney General, just to name a few.
And you think that these 300 attorneys are for the indictments that are going to cascade out here soon?
Yes, I believe Jeff Sessions hired the 300. In fact, people can search on the internet.
Yeah, ABC released it. 313, I think is the number. Go ahead.
Yeah, 300 prosecutors. He is hiring those prosecutors. And the other thing, Greg, and you mentioned this the other day when we were talking, McConnell all of a sudden backed off of summer recess so that a lot of these judges can get appointed that Trump has put in nomination, correct?
He allowed McConnell, who got payoffs from the Chinese, according to Peter Schweitzer's latest book. He and his wife made their family money from Chinese interest.
Yeah, his daddy-in-law is huge in the shipping business out of China, right?
Yeah. But he was allowing the Democrats to be the stoppers, the blockers of the Trump administration. He was allowing it, like him having the vote in the Senate for Obamacare, and he stands up there. Well, it didn't go down the way I thought. That's a terrible. You can't count to 50? You can't count to 50. I mean, Nancy Pelosi can count to 219. You can't count to 50.
Well, maybe she could count to 219. Maybe
you can't count to 50? You're kidding me. And so he's all of a sudden, did Trump, yank a knot in his tail?
I believe it.
Say, listen, you made your money from China. You and your wife, you better get things going here now.
Yeah, I think Donald Trump laid the wood to him, and I think that's why you saw him backing off on the recess. I think that's why you see these judges all of a sudden being brought up for appointment. Yeah, I think so. We have the prosecutors now being hired. We have the judges now being put through. We see, and as I've always said, Greg, the Inspector General's report is about reinstitution of the rule of law. So
boom.
You have the rule of law coming in with the Inspector Generals. You have Huber working with his team of prosecutors.
And he doesn't get a blanked out.
Titans out there. You got 300 and some new federal prosecutors being hired, and now you got the judges being put through.
And Huber doesn't get a redacted version. He gets the real deal.
Right, and Congress, I don't believe, got a redacted version either initially. They've had it since January 12th, Greg.
Trey Gowdy has been the biggest disappointment. I just want to, I'm telling you, because some people are like, oh, hasn't Trey Gowdy, isn't he playing, bad guy, and he's really trying to give him cover? And I said, no. I don't know what.
Let me tell you something.
I like Trey Gowdy. I'm sorry he looked like he's got, I don't know this for a fact, I can't report this, but to me, the kind of crazy, stupid things he's saying, and Giuliani, who's a former federal prosecutor, and also DeGeneva, also a badass former president. They cut him to ribbons. They ground him into sausage.
Yeah, I go back to Benghazi and when he was running that committee, and I know people, high-ranking people that were on former intelligence agency operatives, former high-ranking military personnel that sat on the Citizens Commission for Benghazi, and they created a plethora of information and evidence that Benghazi was a weapons-running operation that went bad, and that the Ambassador Stevens was essentially the first ambassador to al-Qaeda. This was through the Obama administration, along with Hillary Clinton, that he was running arms into al-Qaeda to take out Gaddafi, They wanted Gaddafi out so they could get his oil, get his gold, get his silver. Plus, he was talking about instituting the gold dinar as opposed to using the globalist system of paper money that's not worth anything. They took him out, then they reversed the flow of arms. We're sending him into Turkey, which ended up weaponizing ISIS in Syria. Okay.
And listen,
all that they presented irrefutable evidence in that regard to Trey Gowdy, and Trey Gowdy never brought up the fact that this was a weapons running operation. So since then, I have never trusted anything that guy did or said. And then he compounded it the other day, where he said, well, I really think what the FBI did about surveilling Trump and this whole spot, well, I think they're really handled it well. Well, if that's the case, why the heck is Comey fired? Why did the Inspector General point a finger at McCabe? Why did he's recommending McCabe be indicted? Plus, I listed all these other puppets of the globalists who have either been fired, resigned, quit. Why are all they gone? If this is such a clean operation that was run by the FBI. No, in my mind, and call me a bad guy, I believe Gowdy's dirty.
Well, also Comey was. Congress recommended criminal prosecution for Comey.
Yes,
he's lied to Congress. He's done all kinds of stuff. I mean, he obstructed justice. He covered over for Hillary. Well, I want to before we close that. Go ahead, finish your thought.
Well, one last thing. This was on Zero Hedge. OIG report reportedly finds Comey, quote, defied authority and was insubordinate, end quote.
Oh, come on! Congress offered up 10 or 12 charges on him, all kinds of, and they're all felonies. There's no jaywalking in there. I wanted to get into. They're all. Everyone's a felony. I mean, come on. I mean, he can't own a firearm and won't be able to vote. I mean, Anyway, but I want to get into one last thing, and that was gold and silver. So all this is going on. All this calamity is going on. Germany has terrible banks. A lot of people don't realize it's not just Italy. They want to get out of the euro. France has some terribly weak banks. Germany has, everybody's heard of Deutsche Bank, but they also have Commerce Bank that Martin Armstrong said, they're loaded with derivatives too. They're a bad economic. They can't join them together. It's like having two, neutron bombs being joined together. You get one big one. But gold and silver. You have some sources that talk about the monetary system. A lot of people have been telling gold's never going to go up, silver's never going to go up. We've had this 21 trillion missing dollars that Dr. Mark Skidmore identified so cleanly, and I think the globalists are freaked out by it because they still haven't come up. He's been emailing me, and they can't come up with an answer about what happened with 21 trillion. Not 21 billion.
They sent Mark a bunch of redacted comments.
That's right.
Documents the other day. You couldn't even read them.
You couldn't even read them. So, we're missing 21 trillion on top of the 20 trillion that we already we're pagging about 40 trillion that we know about of money, bonds, digital dollars, whatever created. Back to you. So we brought up gold and silver. I was surprised you knew anything about this. Does your sources say this? So what are your sources saying about gold and silver and what's going to happen with the price action?
Well, the folks that I speak to are in the financial world are very similar to the folks that you speak to in the financial world. And these are people that you're not going to see on CNBS, as I call them, or on Fox Business News with Stuart Varney or Mario Bartiromo. And these are hard money advocates. They believe the only real money is not the paper money that's not backed by anything, but what has been real money for the past 5,000 years, and that being gold and silver. They unanimously believe that the gold and silver markets have been criminally manipulated. They believe that the United States federal government has been integral in this manipulation. They believe that it's been in collusion with the big banks, such as J.P. Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, Citibank, and some other banks from around the world. There are people that have already admitted to criminally manipulating these paper markets.
Gone to jail for it.
Right. Now, when this is going to happen, I do believe there's a day of reckoning coming financially. Trump has actually given us some indication about that there could be some tough days ahead, tough weeks ahead, tough months ahead financially. He has said that. And I believe what he's indicating, and we actually had a report from, you mentioned the piggy bank comment out of out of the G7 meeting this
Yeah.
past week.
America's a piggy bank that everybody
And
continues
there was an
to rob.
indication by some reporter that interpreted John Bolton saying a comment about the U.S. dollar and maybe that its reserve currency wasn't going to be there forever. I do believe that Trump is a master at bankruptcy. And if you look at the fact that we're $21 trillion in debt, there's another $21 trillion in addition that's missing. That's $42 trillion, not including our, if you are these extra benefits that are not worked into the system that John Williams talks about, the Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and the like. We are probably close to, I don't know, name a figure, $70 trillion in debt.
Lawrence Kotlikoff Professor Kotlikoff says we're around 200 trillion with commitments in debt.
So 200. Well, Greg, that's the biggest bankruptcy that Donald Trump has ever been involved with. And I believe he's there for a reason. And I believe one of the reasons he's there is to oversee the bankruptcy proceedings of the United States of America.
To clean the debt up, because we can't move forward unless we get rid of the debt.
And part of that cleaning up, I believe, involves an event, a reset event, that will lead to the escalation in price of gold and silver, and that the manipulation will be terminated. And
now hold on, stop. I want to just get in here with you. Now you have sources, administration sources, political sources that also are thinking this is going to happen too?
I have political sources that have also said that they believe a reset will occur. I do not have a time frame for that reset, but if I just look at what's happening around the world financially, we have Deutsche Bank blowing up, the French banks blowing up, the Italian bond market blowing up, the Italian banks blowing up, the EU blowing up. We have all these banks, including, and most importantly, Deutsche Bank, that is linked to every bank, not just in Europe, but every bank in the United States, every bank around the world. We see China, Russia, and India all accumulating huge amounts of gold and silver. We see Turkey repatriating its gold. We see Germany repatriating its gold. We see China now introducing contracts where you don't have to buy oil in US dollars, but you can buy it in yuan, Chinese currency, and then you can flip that contract into a gold contract. You see Russia and China creating deals with Saudi Arabia, with India, with Iran, so purchase of natural resources with different currencies other than the US dollar. You see a system. We have the SWIFT system that relies on the U.S. dollar. We now have a system that's outside of the Swiss system, or the SWIFT system, that bypasses the dollar. We see Russia and China doing deals in rubles and in yuan. We see at the same time the G7 was meeting, the Shanghai Cooperative meeting was occurring. And Xi Jinping was giving awards to Putin. We see them working in conjunction. We see this Silk Road being built from China up through into Europe. These are all indications that a reset is coming. And I believe the reset is coming sooner rather than later, because you have people that are puppets, if you will, of the globalists, the Terry Duffys of the world, the CEOs of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, that has been integral in the manipulation of gold and silver markets. He goes on Fox Business News a number of months ago, but I believe they put it out there to put a stake in the ground saying, "We told you so," where Duffy says, one day you're going to wake up and, well, you know what? Gold is going to be revalued at $5,000-6,000 an ounce, probably even higher. You have the Wall Street Journal running a front page article asking the question, do we really have that gold that we're supposed to have in our reserves here in the United States? You have Steve Mnuchin, alumnus of Goldman Sachs, who's now the Treasury Secretary, going to Fort Knox about a week after that article came out. A week after Duffy made that statement on Fox Business News, he goes to Fort Knox. Before he walks into Fort Knox, what does he say, Greg? He goes, it would really be something if I went in through those doors and there wasn't any gold there. And then when he came out, which really was odd, and then he comes out, and what did he say?
Gold is safe.
Gold, right. Gold is safe. Well, yeah, so is silver. But wait, gold is safe. Well, not, hey, We looked, and it's assayed the gold, and here's how much gold was here. No, not the gold in Fort Knox is safe. The statement was gold is safe. Yeah, it is.
You think it's sooner than later? You think?
I do. I do not have a time frame on it, but if I look at what's happening with markets, and when I see all these developments that I've just listed,
Yeah.
I believe that it could well be that some of these trade negotiations that are occurring with China, with Russia, with again going back to our initial statements early in the interview, linked to this peace process in North Korea, there could well be a reset discussion that's occurring with these other countries in the midst of these trade negotiations and this peace process in North Korea.
And this is going to happen like on a weekend. This is going to be sudden. That's what your sources say. And that's the only way it's going to be able to work, right? I mean, this is going to be sudden. Is that what your sources say?
Yes.
Like on a weekend?
Yes. Like, for example, the markets close on Friday, normal closure, and then Saturday, Sunday night sometime, an announcement is made about a resetting of the system. The markets don't open that next day. And my sources have felt that when this occurs, that it would probably occur over a 3-day holiday weekend, one that's already built in on a Monday.
In America, I know we talked about this before. Deutsche Bank, they've had all kinds of troubles. You've told me this off camera. Hopefully, I didn't spill the beans on this, but you said your sources say Deutsche Bank's already gone under. I've had other people write me and tell me they've already gone under. They're just.
I've been told they've already gone under.
Deutsche Bank's already gone under.
The reason why this hasn't become blatantly apparent, although their stock price has been sliding, although they're firing thousands of employees. I mean, just think of Lehman, right? What started to happen about in 2007? The first thing you started to see their stock price slipping down, hitting new lows. You started to see a bunch of layoffs, and next thing you know, bang, zoom, right?
On a weekend.
On a week, boom, done. Well, I believe, Deutsche Bank is Lehman on steroids, okay, and I believe the globalist controlled. Bank of International Settlements, the ECB, they have been working behind the International Monetary Fund. They have been working behind the curtain to prop them up as much as possible, essentially treating them like the movie Weekends with Bernie. Okay, the BIS and the IMF are under each arm of Bernie being Deutsche Bank, and they're moving Bernie around the financial landscape saying, Bernie's okay, Bernie's on the beach, Bernie's in a boat, Bernie's in a car, Bernie's dead.
Yeah, you think, and they can't do this forever. So you think they're trying to keep this propped up until they can get the right time to pull the plug? Trump must know all about this, right?
I'm sure he does.
And so do you think that they're trying to get us into it? We're talking this year then. They can't do this for years.
They can't do it. I can't see how they can do this for years. But Greg, look, I've had suspicions about the world financial market since 2008.
Yeah.
Because I truly believe, and people will say I'm wrong on this, but I show me the evidence. I believe we never solved the problems of 2008 and 2008, which was a debt problem. I believe we've never solved that problem. What we did, or what not we did, what the globalists did is they papered it over, and they've created this even larger.
Yeah, more debt. Nomi Prinz, best-selling author Nomi Prinz would back you up on that. She's on my show and said that they, and they grew everybody knows they grew the global debt at 60, 70 trillion on top of the 160 or 70 trillion. It's such a big number. I mean, it's 220 or 230 trillion now. I mean, it's just. I mean, they all know this. They're never paying this money back. They know it.
And look at the guests you bring in.
But we're back.
Nomi Prinz, right? Catherine Austin Fitts, just to name two. Rob Kirby.
Right.
These are pros. These are people that not only are intelligent, but they have tremendous courage. They have tremendous insight, tremendous analytical abilities. And I think if you put the three of them in a room together, it'd be like one voice.
You know what? It's just hit me. You can't reset the system with all this fraud.
No.
You got to get rid of the fraud.
Right.
You can't have a legitimate, I've said this for a long time ago, I quit saying it. You can't have a viable financial system with a backdrop of fraud and crime and phony numbers and fake data and bond buying and bailing out my buddies and, uh,
Because Greg, when it comes down to it, you have to have the rule of law reestablished.
there you go.
Because if you blow up the financial system and you take down the people that need to be taken down, much like Iceland did, right? With
Yeah.
their criminal banking syndicate, you have to have a viable justice system in place. We have not had a viable justice system in place for years, if not decades. And now we're starting to see a shift with the Inspector General's report, as we've discussed, with the hiring of the prosecutors, the 300 prosecutors, with the new judges getting approved. With frankly, Greg, also with the renovation of Gitmo,
Yeah.
because that's going on, right?
Yeah, yeah,
so,
yeah.
so the only way you can bring the banksters, which are the globalists, right, that have created this financial fraud, the only way you can bring them to justice is have a justice system that's based on the rule of law. We haven't had that. So this is why this Inspector General's report, leading to the new prosecutors being hired, leading to the new judges being appointed, is so critical. Because once you have that in place, then you can say, okay, now we're gonna look at the banksters,
We're going to reset the system.
and we're gonna reset the system.
But not for the fraudsters. We're going to reset the system for real. There are going to be a lot of losers. People with pensions, people with paper assets. Going to be a lot of losers if you're on the wrong side of this trade.
Greg, I wish I could say I believe you're wrong. I think you're right. I think people that have worked hard their entire lives, whether they're 25 or whether they're 75, I believe will be adversely affected. Will be adversely affected, not because of the reset occurring, because that's how the globalists initially are going to try to spin it, right? Everybody's going to be adversely affected because of the globalists and what they have done over the decades to enrich themselves and to impoverish the world.
They may have their stuff confiscated. We still have that executive order for human trafficking and corruption.
Right.
So Trump may say, oh, it's not going to be that bad. We're going to confiscate some. You don't get to keep your stuff, you weasels. The stuff you stole fair and square.
Well, and let's hope, because I know President Trump is aware of the work that Mark Skidmore has done and Catherine Austin Fitts have done about the $21 trillion. Let's hope that one of the ways in which he tries to right the tables is that he tries to bring forward restitution, getting those $21 trillion back that have gone missing, that Dr. Mark Skidmore and Catherine Austin Fitts have identified.
Yeah.
That'd go a long way toward making the system whole.
Yeah, you could reset it with that. And with that, I think we'll stop. Oh, one last thing. Thought I forgot about this, didn't you?
What's that?
Your book, Oprah. Oh. You told me that you saved the life of a kid. You were on the Oprah show, which incidentally I was on one time, but not featured like you. I was just on a small little player. What a machine. I mean, that was a television producing machine, Oprah Winfrey. But anyway, go ahead. Your book. Tell me about how this book saved that. It's 6 reprintings. I just want to get this in here. Tell me how this book right here.
So quick story. Oprah had asked me a number of years back to be on her show. And when I got there, she ended up doing the show live because she knew we were taking on the powers that be and what we were talking about in the medical industry, and she did the show live. And as we're doing the show, one of the issues we talked about is some work we had been involved with in the prevention world, and that is the number one reason for kids dying in sport is kids getting hit in the chest with a baseball, softball, lacrosse ball, hockey puck, soccer ball, getting hit in the chest and dying. And we figured out how these kids were dying. What happens is their heart becomes regulated. They jump into what's called an arrhythmia, ventricular fibrillation, when they get hit. And what we found is if you give these kids CPR, it doesn't work. You got to hit their chest, or better yet, get one of those little portable defibrillators and shock their chest, and that's how you can save a kid's life. So we tape the show and we talk about all this information and to empower people. And the show ends, and the next week I hear from some folks in Chicago. And it turns out that a week after the show aired, a 13-year-old boy in the suburbs of Chicago got hit in the chest with a baseball. 2 heart doctors were in the crowd, cardiologists. Kid goes down. They run out. They give the kid CPR. His respirations fall to 0. He turns blue. He's dead. Mom in the crowd gets on the phone on her cell phone, calls the police because she knows they carry defibrillators in their cars in that community. She calls them, says, get a police officer out here with a defibrillator. We have a child that's down. Police officer arrives, runs out to the field. They shock his chest. The child comes back to life. A reporter was there from a big time newspaper, goes to the two heart doctors and saying, did you realize that a defibrillator from this scenario would save this child's life? Two heart doctors. They go, no, we didn't know that. They then go to the mom and they go, are you a doctor? No. Are you a nurse? No. I'm a mom. Well, how did you know to do this? Because those two trained heart doctors didn't know that from this scenario, kid getting hit in the chest with a baseball, using a defibrillator would save us. How did you know that? And she looked at the reporter and said, I saw it on TV. I saw it on Oprah. Now, at one point, Greg, during the commercial break, Oprah turned to me. She goes, so, Dr. Dave, she goes, how many people you think are watching us right now? I go, geez, Oprah, I don't know. She goes, about 12 million. Are you nervous yet? And here's the best part. One of those 12 million people, Greg, was that mom in the crowd who a week later took the information we provided. She took that information and she saved that boy's life who's alive today. And here's why what you do is so important. Because the information you provide helps every person willing to listen and open their eyes. And in the long run, it could well save their life.
Well, Dr. Dave, this book is in the 6th printing. It's on your website, davejanda.com. Also, you can Google Operation Freedom, Dave Janda, Dr. Dave Janda. This book is on there. Thank you, Dave. That's very kind of you to say that. This is a long interview, folks, but I think it was very well worth it. I usually try to do 30 minutes, but we did a lot longer than that because we have Dave Janda. But anyway, Dr. Dave, thanks for joining us. Your radio show, Operation Freedom, the website, davejanda.com, not Dr. Dave, davejanda.com.
DaveJanda.com. We have a public side. We also have a subscription side, 30 cents a day, where we deep dive on issues. Folks are welcome to join us anytime. And they can stream my radio show right from the website, davejanda.com, every Sunday from 2 to 5 Eastern.
It's a good show. I've been on it. So I think I'm going to be on it in a couple of weeks. But anyway.
We are honored.
Well, I'm honored to be on your show and honored to have you on mine. Thank you very much. Dave Janda, davejanda.com, Operation Freedom, the radio show. Thanks for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.